Welcome to the DevReady podcast. Joining me on an episode of the DevReady podcast today, I have Mark Callanan. Thanks for joining me, Mark.
Thanks, Anthony. Pretty happy to be here.
Oh, it's exciting time. I'm happy to be your first podcast you've actually jumped on, which is, we'll take it easy on you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Not a problem. What I'll do, I'll let you introduce yourself because I don't want to butcher or destroy anything about what you do. So I'll let you take it away.
Sure. I'm Mark Callanan and I'm a co-founder of Agarea, and we're revolutionizing risk management for farming businesses. So how we do that is take more granular data sets and structure more modern crop insurance and seasonal finance products.
Is it more around sort of the insurance space or?
Yeah, primarily it is focused on the insurance side of things. So looking to protect farms against big climate related perils such as drought, frost, and the like. So structuring solutions that are more data driven and structured in a better way to reduce the protection gap, so there aren't big wipeouts for the reinsurers and the like.
Okay. I'm probably like a lot of listeners, don't know much about the agriculture space or farming. As I mentioned offline, my only experience is food that I buy or Clarkson's Farm, which is showing you how things work. I did not know that you could actually get insurance for a failed crop.
Yes.
Okay.
You can. Well, so there's a couple of different markets. So in Australia, the only peril that's insured is hail and fire. There have been some other perils insured in the past, but those traditional crop insurance products, with an increase in climate-related events, severity of hailstorms and the like, have seen some pretty big payouts. They're tied to commodity prices off the back of things like the Ukraine war have been quite stout. Plus, the last few years we've seen some really good yields and some really bad yields. So, and they're quite traditional from an insurance standpoint. I think the insurance sector's, slowly but surely moving into the digital age. There's actually a new form of insurance called parametric, which is becoming more and more popular, and that is related to purely to data, an objective data set that provides a trigger, and that trigger determines the payout, rather than having a loss assessor come out to assess the damage, which is obviously quite expensive and cumbersome and hard on a big property. It's really just about limiting those claim costs, having payouts because the system needs payouts, but streamlining that process with efficiency, accuracy, and reducing the overheads and I guess reallocating the risk, which is what the market's all about, being able to the reinsurance market adequately transfer certain risks.
Okay, so just as a complete unknown to this industry, those things you see in the news when the farms are being completely overrun by mice or the grasshopper things, can't remember what they're called, cicadas or whatever they're like. Locust, that's the one. That's a huge worry, I'm guessing, for farmers and being in that space, because you get one of those swarms coming through, there's the entire field, maybe all of the fields being destroyed.
Yes.
But that's not covered in insurance and with the high hail and fire, but...
No, correct.
So that's not covered at all.
Yeah. From a pest standpoint, I mean, our product, it would be covered because it's tied to your yield. So we underwrite the product based on your yield history. You need 10 years of yield history. So the last 5 years, that data and accuracy and availability of that yield data has improved remarkably well. And that's mainly driven by the collection of that data by the OEM companies such as John Deere, using better sensors and equipment, connectivity on farm, allowing access, once the data is collected, it goes straight to the cloud and it can be accessed via API and from the data's permission.
Okay, so you're tapping into all of the equipment, the manufacturers, what they provide, the open APIs, and I'm guessing there's going to be new like IoT sensors that are being put everywhere to then monitor the crops, weather, things that are happening, and then you're using all of that data set to then make an objective decision through some calculations and provide that yield based on history and things like that.
Yeah, so our thesis is, every farm's got a machine on it and every machine's collecting data. There's critical operations such as planting, fertilizer applications, and obviously yield data. The performance of your farms generally tied to your yield and the
Yep.
quality of the yield. So utilizing all those data sets that are coming to the fore to structure a solution for that particular farm. Traditional insurance is about applying or having a large area and ring fencing that and applying rates for those given areas.
Yep.
Now, I think historically that was fine with a lack of data and the approach and assessing certain events and perils and the like. But just given what we've seen in the last 5, 6 years, there has been an increase in climate volatility, and each farm, I guess, depending on the size, has its own unique risk profile. So being able to structure solutions quickly and that are more appropriate for that particular cover holder.
Yep. And I'm guessing that sort of having an assessor go out is more of a like a one size fits all approach, because they'll just assume, all right, from our studies or whatever they've decided to do at the insurance company, a plot of land this size should have X yield for this type of crop. Where now you're going, all right, this farmer may be more risk averse or less risk averse, sorry. So he's now going to be putting either more seeds or mixing seeds or doing something different fertilizer ratios and etc., trying different things. So his actual yield could potentially be much higher than someone else's. So that's the more tailored approach.
Correct. That's certainly a flow-on effect, knowing that you have that floor in there and being able to maximize yield potential. I mean, farmers are not only the busiest people on the planet, but they're dealing with so many variables
Yep.
at any given point in time. So giving them access, not saying, hey, here's something that could make you farm better. It's like, here's the financial risk protection or capability in terms of certain products that incentivize you to maximize the potential of your crop in any given season, because that could change in a 14 or 28-day rain forecast. So having the tools available to help with that is going to be important going forward.
It's an interesting space to be in, because it's all external factors that are all out of their control.
Correct.
Even the soil, the farm they're buying, the soil is not in their control. It's if someone's farmed it shit before them and destroyed the nutrients in the soil, they're already at a problem, but they're not necessarily going to know that. They might do random samples, I'm guessing, but yeah, that's only going to get you so far if someone hasn't done a good job beforehand.
Yeah, that's certainly the case. If someone's looking to bump up their yields in the years before selling, they can generally apply a good amount of inputs. I guess in that scenario, I mean, again, we'll need that yield history and have to verify it as part of the underwriting process. But yeah, we're really looking to help protect farmers against those risks that are outside their control.
Yep. So what got you into Agarea, and what was the kernel that started that idea?
Sure. So I used to work in banking in London. I then moved back home and didn't want to do banking anymore. So worked as an analyst for an agricultural investment fund that was seeded by probably the biggest American commodities company, Cargill. So that role was, a steep learning curve in agriculture. I didn't come from the land originally, but we were deploying capital into assets, mainly up and down the east coast of Australia.
Would that be investing into farms or
into the land and the crops that grew out of the
Yep.
land? So that was our mandate. There was associated infrastructure on some of those portfolio companies, being grain storage, irrigation, dams, and the like. But predominantly, into the land and in areas that we found interesting and we're going to generate a good operating return for us. In one particular season, one of those businesses got heavily impacted by drought, and there was discussions with the bank, with the financing, and all the rest of it. And it was just that particular process got the wheels spinning in my mind, which was about 5 years ago, into how we could do better when something like that happened. It was just, it was a extensive and painful process and a lot of spreadsheet data, which doesn't necessarily paint help in terms of painting the picture from an ag credit scenario. That banking's driven by cash flow, and if it doesn't rain, there's no there's no cash flow. So how can we better create solutions that help protect that type of event or risk from happening? So that's when the wheels started spinning. Upon further investigation, I mean, insurance is really the only mechanism that could help in that scenario. So I, after that corporate role, took up a country head role with a British ag tech startup called Hummingbird Technologies. Their focus was analyzing imagery of farms or agricultural land. So utilizing satellites and drones to build products or do some machine learning against. So I joined them to build out their fintech product suite. So utilizing satellite imagery to do broad scale portfolio health assessments, and whether that was for a big, grain handler or commodity trader, a bank or an insurance company. There was a few different projects and workflows that were happening in that space. I then decided to move on from that because I didn't think satellites were necessarily going to be the answer. There was a couple of points which I think needed a little bit more rigor around, what happens if, clouds are in the way for an extended period of time, or something happened to the satellite, and then just ultimately looking at the commercial viability of some of the high resolution satellite images, and when that was going to be feasible on, say, a 10,000 hectare farm. If you're saying it's, really needs to get down to sub $1 a hectare, and without having seen where that market is currently, just some concerns about when that was ever going to get down to a level that was going to be commercially feasible for financial risk.
Yeah, my assumption would be drones would be more suitable for that sort of work. They're lower cost, and then
I mean, drones have their own challenges from the regulatory side of things. I've seen some really great things happen in the last couple of years, but just in terms of the licensing beyond visual line of sight, and being able to automate the drone. So like the drone in a box scenario, I think is quite interesting. If you could have neighboring farms chip in and have 3 drones and they're just flying 24/7, I think that's super interesting, particularly in the age of Starlink, where you've got high-speed internet out there that helps with the processing of that data because it is quite heavy. One of our best products, and this was a while ago, and I've seen some really interesting stuff recently actually, was flying a drone out over a field and picking up where the weeds were in a summer spraying cycle. So it's a green on brown technology, green against the brown in the dry summer dirt, and then just gridding that data, integrating with your standard chemical boom spray, which most of the farms have. I mean, some of the larger operators have the camera sprays or optical sprays, which are super great tech, but they're just expensive. So this was a lower cost entry point for those guys. But again, just getting that data processed when you're flying out in the middle of nowhere, you have to send a drone pilot out there, and all those good things. So I kind of moved on from that and just I did a bit of a thesis around investigating where the data sets were at and what was being collected from each machine. So whether it's a tractor, a sprayer, a fertilizer spreader, or a harvester, and made the decision that John Deere had come a long way in a pretty short period of time from an innovation and data standpoint, and that trend was going to continue. And I think now, someone told me recently they might even employ more data engineers than they do mechanical engineers. So
that's no surprise.
And they, I think their preferred brand, like they were always just a hardware company, big shiny tractors and headers and harvesters, bigger, better horsepower. But now there's a real focus around the data element and the ability to structure many solutions around the back of that, whether
Yeah.
it's, agronomic, financial risk. Yeah, there's just really a plethora when you think about the amount of data that's being collected and the variables across crops, geographies. It's really and we're only at the start of it. So that was interesting to me. And that journey took me to meet my co-founder, Adrian Rolls, who's a precision ag expert. So he's actually been handling those data sets generated by the machines for over 20 years. And then we joined an accelerator program and met Ademi, who's our technical co-founder, and he's building the platform.
Okay, so it's quite the journey, but I can see sort of the progression into where you've gone, which is working in the space, getting exposure to it, and understanding limitations with the current way things are happening with the satellite imagery, the cost and the downfalls to it, and then having to have a data-driven approach to make decisions. So I can see how it's all culminated into what you guys are doing now. So how long was it before you met your technical co-founder? Because there's normally either it's a technical co-founder that starts the idea or it's a non-technical founder and then they don't know what to do.
Yeah, that's a good question. So with Adrian, we bounced around which direction we wanted to go. So from the financial risk side of things, go down the credit path, the insurance path, the commodity trading path, picked crop insurance. Because of the climate volatility and lack of market solutions and what was happening in the parametric space. We then made a decision because we got some funding from the New South Wales government to build an MVP, and given the complexity of the space, we made a business decision that we wanted a third co-founder coming in to be there from the start, because there is a lot of knowledge that needs and it's slow and it takes time. So rather than paying an agency, 25, 50 grand, whatever it costs to build an MVP, and who might be, whiz bang, but don't have the ag knowledge, which requires patience and which, not, it doesn't necessarily work in those early days.
Yeah.
Because, you guys just want to get stuff out, right? So we wanted that person in there from day one. So then started doing, going to market and trying to tap my network and be like, hey, you want to come in for equity only role? This is what we're doing, and our vision is what we're building. Didn't necessarily have a good, I think there was 3 or 4 candidates I spoke to, and it just wasn't vibing the fit.
Yep.
Then applied for an accelerator program that was split across technical, domain and business co-founders, and obviously the technical co-founders are, the popular ones. So I spoke to a few there, spoke to Ademi. He'd spoken to a few people, and we gelled and spoke about what we wanted to do, and that was
it.
Nearly 2.5 years ago now. So
that's an interesting way. I haven't heard that story before. It's just like random co-founders getting together almost.
Yeah, it was through the Antler Accelerator program.
Yep. Okay. So they're trying to pair the non-technical and technical together, and then you're probably going to have 2 different ideas and see if you can mesh them together to make one better idea.
Correct. And I guess we kind of were a bit later stage than people come in there with barely the
back of a napkin,
or I want to work in startups,
and
then they come in and they get thrown into the washing machine and see if they survive. But we kind of obviously came in with something pretty half baked, and then we've built off the back of that. So started Dev a couple of months later, and have gone from there.
A lot of those back of the napkin idea people, if they want to just work in startups, they're seeing the Instagram, TikTok life of a startup. They're not seeing the actual startup life. Yeah. Everyone thinks there's an overnight success, but it's 5, 10, 15 years in the making.
Strapping a GoPro to my head when I go out to the bush.
Just to show them what it's really like. Yeah. It's a lot of hard work. If being a startup was easy, everyone would be doing it.
Correct.
I always say, if something's worth doing, it's not easy.
And there was it was pretty eye-opening on that program I mentioned because, yeah, there was a lot of people that didn't last a week or two.
I can imagine. Yeah,
Um,
depending what background they've come from, because a lot of people who, the way from what our experience is, you're either really young and then uni and think you've got an idea to try and change the world,
yeah,
or you've been in business, you've got domain knowledge like yourself, and you think, all right, I've seen a problem here. I know I can do this better, or I can exploit this hole in the market that doesn't exist, and then you move out and try and do it.
yep,
Yeah. And then there's the third one, which is they've got experience in one domain, but they've got an idea in a completely random thing that's nothing to do with what they know. And they think, all right, I'm successful here, so I can just jump over there and be successful,
yep.
let alone know what problems there are, like me jumping into the ag industry. Clarkson's Farms, my
Hey,
only
well,
experience. It's only going
welcome
to
you
get
to
me
those
so far.
farms. We need more techies in
Yeah.
ag.
Oh, I can imagine how it's changing over the years. Like you mentioned, so John Deere was all right known for their equipment, but now they're probably going to be known for what the equipment can do beyond just harvesting, seeding, fertilizing, because there's sensors everywhere. So again, Clarkson's Farm, you look, they show you the inside of the tractor and they're programming tram lanes and what flow rate they have to do for seeding and all this sort of stuff. And then it's just, yeah, capturing all of that and then making that visible. Then you know what your expected yield is, not, all right, we put 50 bags of seeds into that thing. It's, we've
Yeah.
got X amount of seeds in X, Y coordinates all over the whole thing mapped and gridded.
Well, it's like variable rate seeding, variable rate fertilizer, like being able to plant your seed at the depth which has the optimal moisture. Like
Yeah.
stuff like this is coming down the pipe. It's not just doing your, you know, canola, 2.5 kilos of seed across everything. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
2 kilos here, 3 kilos there, and just really optimizing the data that you
Yeah.
have to hand.
And
And
then,
yeah, as I said, it's the start of the journey.
yeah.
Um, I don't know if you store or know much about Starlink, but they've now partnered with John Deere, which is pretty exciting.
Okay. I
So
didn't know that.
yeah, most of the workflows going to be driven out of the US and Brazil. But if you just think about that in the pure data collection element and the improvements, I think John Deere will be, Deere will be able to make off the back of that. But then on the agronomic and
Yeah.
modeling and analytics side of things, the things that are going to be happening in a few years' time, it's exciting.
Yeah. It's going to give you real time data
Mm.
on the entire industry
Yep.
once everyone moves to it, which is, all right, satellites, you'll have to probably, I'm guessing, not that I know how they work, you book time with them. Whenever they fly past over a certain area, then if you've paid enough, you'll get your photos taken because that's the deal made. And then, like, there's a delay in that. Then you mentioned weather. All right, how long's the storm or the clouds going to sit over for it to do passes whenever it does them to capture that data? And then you're behind. And then, all right, farmers are doing stuff. They're not going to have as much time to log and report things back either. So there's another delay. So everything will be then lagging.
Yeah, it needs to be. Yeah, it needs to be real time, automated. Like that's another of our key pillars, light touch automation. Like again,
Yeah.
farmers are super busy, so getting them at any given point in time is tricky. So removing that, whilst all of our requests are permission based and we
Mhm.
have agreements in place and the like, and they get notifications. It's about just keeping keeping their need of their time as light as possible.
Yeah. I imagine the autonomous driving is going to be a big thing for them too, if they can get that into those harvesters, combiners, and tractors, etc. So going back into sort of your startup world, you've been 2.5, 3 years, maybe 4 on this journey from what you've said. What's some of the biggest challenges you've had to date that you've had to sort of overcome that you didn't expect? Where do you start?
I just laugh because there's so many there. So I just have to
Which one stands out?
the biggest challenges. I think in agriculture, there's a big challenge between city versus country, and city not necessarily knowing what or how the country operates, just
Yep.
in terms of all those things I mentioned before. Simple thing is like internet connectivity, transmission of data, and
Because you're moving a lot of pictures.
I mean, there's the industry itself. There's a lot of very large businesses that pull the levers. So I think there's certain elements that are still, getting up to speed just in terms of, there's some key inputs, pricing transparency, commodity prices, availability of information. Some of these big trading companies, up until a few years ago, were still writing like triplicate trading notes. Like,
Oh well, okay.
so
Carbon
all
copies of those
these types
books
of
and pulling
things
them
are
out.
kind of, it's pretty eye opening. Again, we're of the view that the future is around, APIs and managing those and being able to, I guess, people sticking in their lane and being very good at what they do, and then partnering up with folks that they can, collaborate and help each other and push the industry forward to the future. I mean, it's hard for a farmer, right? You're kind of bound to the pricing on the cost of the inputs. So you see chemical and all that side, and then on the other side, you on the way out, that you're bound to the commodity
Yep.
prices in the markets, and kind of so you got to make do with what happens before the farm gate, so you can maximize those opportunities. And we certainly think that all farmers out there, there's some bloody good ones, and they manage so many variables and do an absolutely cracking job with with what they do in growing a crop year after year. So we're just looking to really support them through better financial risk solutions, so that they can know that they can take potential different decisions around what they do on that farm to really maximize that production.
Yeah, it's a very interesting role that they have. Essential, but then nothing's in their control.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, it's living with
correct.
uncertainty
And then
every minute.
you add to the fact, labor, like getting access to labor
Yeah.
in key parts of the season, planting, harvest, and I think certainly some of the public programs out there probably haven't hit the nail on the head in terms of how funding is allocated, visas and labor hire and matching all that. So it's really tricky. I mean, again, the whole farm is a busy piece. You'd love to be able to, pick states or regions and get them all in a room and nut out things. But
Heads down and not something else.
is they have conference. There's obviously industry bodies and they have
Yeah,
conferences and the like. But if half of them something
don't agree
happens,
or
or they have something on, then that's the farm's the baby.
yeah, of course, that's always the priority. So over the journey you've had, what's one like one of those like aha moments? This is going to work that you've had in coming up with your modeling or finding the product that's actually helped someone get over one of those problems.
The aha moment was so where our secret is we algorithms and processing methodology that sit behind us taking the data direct
Yep.
from the farm or the harvester, for instance, say the yield, and then being able to present that in a clean or processed manner to reflect what's actually happened. So there is obviously a huge element of risk attached to that. I mean, given where we're at in the journey, there's calibration risk in terms of some of the sensors that are used on some of these machines. So obviously, the newer the machine, the better quality the data. So I guess when I first, so from the business standpoint, needed to be an independent adjudicator of like what my co-founders were doing and the data that they were presenting versus what the farmer thought that those values were.
Oh,
I
okay.
think when we tested 3 farms 6 months ago off the back of last year, the best aha moment was this is a blue sky farm in terms of the tech that they use. They've got, when they harvest, they've got the newest John Deere gear, and then within the chaser bin or grain cart, they call them in North America, within those scales. So when they harvest, just to explain things simply. Harvester goes along, and then when the bin fills on the back of the
Yep.
machine, they have to put it into a chaser bin. So that's a tractor pulling a bin
Hmm.
by the side of the harvester.
Yep.
So within that chaser bin, they had scales. So they were measuring the weight and volume and other key, moisture and other key pieces. So that farmer had a pretty legit reconciliation running and had done a final reconciliation of that harvest from last year. And I compared that against what we did, and on around 13,000 tons, the difference was 0.92%, which is, yeah, that was, I was expecting 5 or 6%,
Okay.
which at scale kind of
Yep.
creates questions around, when you're talking insurance payouts and all that piece, which values the true one. So that was a really big box tick for us. Obviously, that's not going to be the case across
Yep.
all farms, but the ones that we're certainly targeting in the early days with the machine and the data and where I guess historically some of the risks are in terms of the whole loss assessment process on traditional insurance solutions means that we're definitely heading in the right direction. So that was a big aha moment for us.
Getting that accurate means a lot, especially at that level. And I can
Yeah,
imagine that that's probably something you had thought about, which is, all right, if things get older or the older equipment, if they're not calibrated, then the readings will be wrong. So then your data will be wrong.
correct.
And
Yeah,
then
so
what they're
we
assuming is wrong as well at the farm level.
well, the whole you're underwriting the product based on the yield provided by data that's not been calibrated correctly. So we've got, again, my Adrian, he's an expert in the space. So being able to understand whether the data's been calibrated. Sometimes it's pretty obvious. There's some pretty wacky data that gets put in there, but being able
Yep.
to then process that data to get it to a point and we'll then run our own checks in terms of whether it makes sense. We're building a backward-looking crop model right now that takes into account water use efficiency, which is a key driver of crop results. So being able to put in a few sense checks around the protocol that gets us to a point where are we comfortable with this data and being able to provide that to the underwriters,
Yep.
both from a underwriting scenario and then on the other end, like in a payout scenario. So yeah, we've got our checklist, which is obviously incredibly important because you have you have a dodgy payout or two,
Of course.
and it's
It can
it's
end you or it could end the farm too, either way, depending on if it's too little. So it's a very methodical process, a lot of back testing, which is required for the space you're in, and that makes sense because it's risk management. So how are you going to manage your own risk, not just help them manage theirs?
yep.
Yeah. So where to from here, or what's next for Agarea?
So we have just finalized so in the lead up to Christmas last year, we undertook a big pilot with a large reinsurance company, a top ranked European company, and we they actually seconded a lead underwriter out here
Yeah.
from Germany. So we're working very close with them, or have been this year, and we've structured a solution that we're going to be commercially rolling out next year. So at the moment now, we're finalizing our go to market.
Yep.
There's because we've chosen insurance, but none of us have an insurance background. So which insurance is it's an interesting ecosystem. There's a lot of
Okay.
it's complex. You got
I can imagine.
insurance brokers, underwriting agencies, claims. You
Mhm.
got policy admin systems. So working through all of that, we've managed to bed down with, I'd say, a premium reinsurer, which you can't, you need the reinsurer as a on board because they effectively tell the insurers whether they're going to provide support for them,
Yep.
and you can't have insurance without reinsurance effectively.
Okay.
So getting them on board in the lead up to Christmas that was an incredible achievement. So we've been working with them in terms of how a product would work. An area yield cover is what it's called. So again, focused on the yield. The crops initially will be wheat and barley. We'd love to do all crops in year one, but again, managing that risk. Some of those other crops have both more risk from a growing standpoint, disease risk, heat risk of flowering and the like. So we're focused on wheat and barley in year one, just steady as she goes. And we are currently finalizing our go-to-market in terms of distribution. We've got key channel partners that we've got relationships with, but just formalizing how all of that looks. Again, on the licensing piece, there's a few boxes to tick on the regulatory side of things with insurance and the like. We are a platform provider, so we're not, we don't have an AFSL or a license.
You're just the tools that they use
Correct.
to help provide better products. Yeah.
Correct.
But yeah, it sounds like, you've got a lot of the boxes ticked that a startup needs to cover from everyone that we've spoken to and being around the industry for a while. You've got technical co-founder, non-technical co-founders. You've got the idea, you have background in the space, domain knowledge, partnered with the right people to try and get the product out. You've got an MVP that's running and tested models and got it working. And then you've even niched into delivering on specific products. So not just like insurance, it's down to the wheat and barley is a niche to get that right. And then you can look at doing the rest. So the dominoes seem to be falling in the right way from my 10,000.
To go one step further. So the insurance piece is a downside protection tool, right? Looking to put a floor in when you get smacked by drought or frost in a kind of severe event. But we're also rolling out a couple of pilots next year that revolve around maximizing the upside. So being able to provide interest-free finance on a certain type of fertilizer at a certain type of year, saying if you have an average or above average year, we'll structure a solution that gives you access to this product at a better price, and then we'll measure the result in the end and split the upside. So so having both that upside and downside balance is important, because the farmer's key focus, or number one focus, is maximizing yield potential. So ensuring that we have a tool to help in that.
Yes, you're covering the rainy days and the sunny days.
Correct.
Yeah, and that's a great spot to be and be able to provide, not just for when stuff goes wrong, but to help them do better. If you can save people time or help them make more money, you're always going to be in a better position.
Agreed.
Yeah. Well, Mark, it's been a pleasure to chat to you today. It's a bit eye-opening for me. I didn't know there was this many things involved in, like, at the data level happening in farms, but it's exciting to see, because it's definitely needed, and that's a space where, any little factor can affect the rest, and there's probably hundreds more that we haven't even touched upon that are all coming together to make what farmers do work and what you do work as well. So I wish you all the luck, and thanks for jumping on board and spending the time to have a chat today.
Great. Really appreciate coming on, and thanks for reaching out, and look forward to listening to the future podcast.
Not a problem. If anyone wants to reach out and find out more about Agarea and yourself, how can they do that? Sure.
We've got a website, agarea.com.au. My email's mark@agarea.com.au. My phone number's on the website. That's the easiest way.
No problem. And we'll add those to the show notes as well. So once again, thank you for joining me.
Thanks, Anthony.
Thanks.
Bye.